Hello and welcome to another big UC News show. My name's David Dungay. Today I am joined by many experts. Let's do some quick introductions. I'll go around the room. I have Mr. Evan Kirstel. Welcome. Blair Pleasant, Maribel Lopez, Craig Durr, Elka Popova, and John Arnold. Welcome to the show. And of course, my co-host for today, Mr. Rob Scott. How's everyone doing?
Great.
Thanks.
Well, we are fresh off the back of Enterprise Connect, and we have so many announcements to get into. Should we get stuck into that conversation? Rob, what is on the agenda for today?
Well, first of all, David, I'm just wondering whether you should start calling me your co-pilot, not co-host, just with the theme of AI that's floating around at the moment. But I'm sure we're going to dig into a bit of AI in today's show. But first of all, and I'm not sure whether it's the rise or the resurrection of the mobile PBX. Some people are calling it mobile UC, mobile UCaaS, but there's a lot happening around this topic. So, David, this was something at Enterprise Connect last week that we saw a lot of and heard a lot about. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So the big announcement from last week was a tie-up between AT&T and Microsoft Teams Phone. And this is really aimed at the mobile workforce. So what does it mean? Well, if you've got an AT&T mobile phone or smartphone, it seamlessly integrates with the Microsoft Teams phone. So it essentially enables companies to scale their sort of Teams communications operations far more effectively. It's quite cost effective as well, and it's really addressing that sort of digital environment we're all finding ourselves in. So this is preventing siloed communications within organizations. I mean, many people in the room have a mobile, you might have a desk phone, you might have a client on your PC or Mac as well. So this is about bringing that all together in an easy to manage sort of low cost way. And I guess the added kicker to this is Copilot as well. So now those Copilot features, those AI features are now available through this sort of the phone as well, which is great. So I really want to hear from our expert panel about this. Let's go to Elka first. Now, Elka, what does this arrangement kind of mean for the industry more largely sort of speaking? Are we going to see more of these kind of these deals happening? And what did you hear on the ground at Enterprise Connect from a mobile PBX perspective?
Well, mobility is obviously not a new topic, and we've been looking at different solutions to enable the mobile workforce over the past couple of decades. What's different today is that the newer mobile PBX or mobile UCaaS solutions are integrated with collaboration platforms such as Teams or WebEx, and that provides certain benefits to both the end users and the IT admins within customer organizations. More specifically, the AT&T announcement is in a series of Teams Phone Mobile launches. So last year, 4 or 5 providers launched Teams Phone Mobile. They call their solution slightly differently. There's Verizon Mobile for Teams, for Microsoft Teams. There's Microsoft Teams Phone Mobile by Rogers Business. These are just in North America, but there are Teams Phone Mobile offerings in Europe by BT, Deutsche Telekom, Swisscom, Telia. I hope I'm not leaving anyone out. There are a few more that are upcoming. I think they've been officially announced. I think I saw the announcements on the internet, so I'm not revealing anything secret, but Odido, Vodafone, UK, Virgin Media are upcoming in this kind of series of announcements. As you pointed out, there are certain benefits, and for the end user, it's the ability to use the native dialer. And for some users, this is of importance. For others, maybe not so much. We're raising an app-based kind of generation or generations, but it certainly helps overcome the limitations of data networks. So you can use the cellular voice network for communications, which has its benefits. Certainly the integration with Teams, it enables the organization to consolidate user business IDs. phone IDs. So your team's phone ID becomes your mobile ID. It allows the organization to consolidate calling plans. You can get rid of the wireline calling plan and just use the mobile calling plan. For the users that used to have both the UC ID and the mobile phone with the mobile ID. Now, are these solutions dramatically different from the mobile PBXs that have existed for decades? Vodafone won Net Express in Europe. Telia, besides Teams Phone Mobile, has 3 more solutions. Telenor and some others have existing solutions in North America. Verizon, OneTalk, and Rogers Unison are obviously mobile PBXs. One could argue that each have different kind of positioning. And while many of the existing mobile PBXs have kind of targeted the micro businesses, the lower end of the customer spectrum, these collaboration-centric solutions may be a better fit for mid-market and above for many multinational companies. The jury's still out how successful they will be. I believe there will be pockets of interest and growth, both in terms of kind of geographies and in terms of user demographics. Some providers are looking at the knowledge workers, others are positioning these solutions for field force and frontliners, and they may have different degrees of success depending on their execution and the way the effectiveness of how the way they position these benefits with customer organizations, because awareness and understanding of these solutions is still kind of a challenge, I would say.
Wow, that was really well said, Elke. I would just add, maybe from a user perspective, I think this story is actually, from a carrier standpoint, much bigger than even Teams. I was at Mobile World Congress, and pretty much every carrier is developing a story for business communication services and CPaaS driven natively from the carrier. And I, for example, I run a very small business, but I use Dialpad, which is integrated with T-Mobile for business. And it's really neat solution, integrated billing, integrated services, one line for support. And typically SMBs like myself are really overlooked by these kind of offers. And it's a great opportunity for them. It's a huge marketplace, and I just see more of this kind of integration happening moving forward.
Yeah, just to add to that, Evan, Elke, I didn't follow this announcement very closely, but how is this different from what AT&T did partnering with WebEx? That's almost 2 years ago at this point. With WebEx Go, which is exactly the same thing.
There are similarities, certainly. It's all a direct integration of AT&T's mobile network with the respective partners' cloud platform. In both cases, they're not charging additional fees. It's really just the calling plan that's the revenue generator for AT&T, whereas the partner Cisco or Microsoft is in charge of the cloud solution, cloud collaboration charges. Both provide the enable users to use the native mobile dialers, and in both cases, the admins can manage users in the same admin portal where they manage WebEx users or Teams users. And I just want to echo what Evan was saying or hinting at, but in both of these cases, there is a greater degree of security and compliance and manageability and governance compared to just having a mobile device with a mobile business plan, which is separate from the UC platform. So this is another benefit I kind of forgot to talk about. And I was going to ask Evan a question. I mean, we're touting the native dialer as a key benefit, but Evan, if you're using Dialpad on T-Mobile, it's an app-based solution. Is that a problem for you?
It's not for me. I can imagine some people seeing it as a problem. I mean, I live in apps. Pretty much everything I do is app driven. So it's kind of consistent. It's on my home screen. So it's a frequently used app. And I think the kind of integration and the features you get, particularly around like call blocking and spam blocking and all those sort of things, is really valuable. Plus, it has some security features and some filtering capability. So yeah, the app is kind of a plus versus a negative for me.
Elka, there's one thing I would add, I think also as a benefit, I'm interested in seeing how it rolls out, is the integration of Copilot and now having the ability now to transcribe and index those mobile calls. Now that in combination with the work they're doing with PSTN lines, you now are really creating a really 360 view of your communication. So it might be a really interesting use case for an individual to say, Copilot summarized for me every time I spoke to Elka, and it can pull from all these different transcripts now that they're all in a single communication platform. So that's something I'm keeping an eye on. I think that might be really interesting as it continues to roll out.
God forbid that should happen, Craig. But you're correct in pointing that out. I believe the AT&T announcement stated that they're the first one of the TPM launches to use the Azure Communications Services gateway. And that seems to be the platform that will enable more AI-powered features in the future. So the solution is engineered slightly differently from other TPM solutions.
You know, Craig, to your point, by the way, this is just reflects the big, broader theme of AI dominating this whole show. That many conversations are now on mobile. That's an important data stream to capture and work into Copilot and all of the cloud-based platforms that are trying to capture every conversation that we're having. That's a whole broader theme, but I didn't hear it coming out of the mobile announcement. But the Microsoft connection makes that to me, very real, more so than talking about WebEx or Dialpad, Evan. Just the market power of Microsoft adds a lot of scale to this possibility of adding this data stream to everything else they're trying to capture.
Speaking of scale, in my conversations with organizations and service providers, the expectation is that the more providers we have on WebEx Go or Teams Phone Mobile, the more compelling it becomes for larger organizations partnering with different wireless carriers to move to these mobile solutions, because then they can basically manage their workforce on the same platform rather than, having AT&T in the US and then no one to support them in Hungary or some other country. So the more launches we see, the larger the acceleration in the adoption.
Interesting. So I'm conscious we've got a lot to get through. Should we move on to our next topic? Rob, what have we got?
Well, let's talk collaboration and UC devices and hardware. There was lots on show at within the Expo Hall last week at Enterprise Connect, but it's a category that's ever expanding, and we saw that expanding last year, this year, and our resident device expert Craig Durr, I'm sure, can weigh in on this, David. But lots of announcements around hardware last week, including one particularly notable vendor launched another desk phone. Can you believe? So why don't we talk through some of those announcements?
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone loves a device, and just when you think devices can't get any more innovative, they do. Right. So you mentioned there Cisco. A couple of devices came to fruition last week, and that was the Cisco Board Pro G2, which is a collaboration board, but also the Cisco Desk Phone Series 9800. And I almost fell asleep as I started reading that press release until they started talking about AI and how they're approaching infusing hybrid working technology within those desk phones now. Really, really interesting, actually, and how they're enabling employees to kind of do things like book hot desks. They can summarize meetings and do all the kinds of things we've come to know and love in this hybrid universe over the last couple of years. You now can do them through the desk phone as well. So that's really, really interesting. But let's go to Craig. Craig is the expert here on devices. We're seeing lots of things being launched at the moment, but also the approach to the market as well, especially around Microsoft Teams rooms. Craig, what are you seeing? What were your hot picks?
There was a
last week?
handful of device announcements that did filter through that caught my eye. Going back to the Cisco one, you mentioned a couple. They talked about their ProBoard G2. I think the wink and the nod to me is their executive who oversees this product group. Also, his first name is G2. But I did clarify G2 stood for generation 2 of the product. So next generation of that Pro board, like you said, the 9800 series was a whole new phone line. And it was really interesting. They would bring them out. You would think it wouldn't be that exciting, but I sat and spoke to the product management team there, and they were excited about it for the exact reasons you hit. It's a full service line. There's 4 or 5 models there. But what it's really trying to do is take this concept of a static phone that's typically assigned to one person. It's going back to that hot desking concept again, adding some features and functionalities to make them work in a hybrid office where people are hot desking and hoteling, such as LED indicator lights, programmable buttons for specific activity as well. And again, capturing some of that AI information that plays well into their spaces planning around as well too. But there were some other ones that were really interesting too that were just hitting the market. For example, Avocor had some devices that were announced at ISC, and it was the first time they were really being shown at an event like this on the U.S. shores. Their X series, large format, indirect LED display, something you might think you might see like in a stadium wall, designed for a conference room. And the interesting use cases are saying there's a lot more town halls, a lot more gatherings based upon our hybrid work that require extra large monitors where projectors aren't working or other things because of indirect light and what have you. They said they're actually back ordered based upon what they have going on with that right now. One other one I like to hit plays into the Microsoft Teams story, the MTR Microsoft Teams Room story. Lenovo announced, and it was kind of quiet, an i3 version of an MTR solution. Now, it's not the first time we saw this in market because MaxHub did one in cooperation with Microsoft earlier the year as well too. But it's the first time a PC manufacturer and OEM is bringing out a solution specific to that. Now, i3 plays to the low price point, and these solutions are now getting devices, room systems in, close to under $1,500, $1,000, depending on the type of camera you bundle with. So it's a really interesting endeavor, and I expect to see other OEMs, manufacturers, think Dell, think HP, also creating these low-cost MTR solutions to play in that market. And then there was one last thing, if I can bring this up too. I think it was a Microsoft story, not specific to a vendor solution, but it speaks to what they're thinking about within the meeting spaces. It is their new solution around helping to identify and inventory these BYOD spaces. So here's the common problem. A lot of these rooms out there are unmanaged, have cameras, microphones in them, but IT can't see them. They can't tell if the devices are there, if they're on, if they're working. They had a really clever notion that they announced where they're going to allow the Teams client that's located on all our PCs that when you go and plug it into one of these rooms, starts creating an inventorying process. The trigger is this. It's going to look for unique serial numbers of those devices. And at the point in time that it sees 5 unique team clients use that device, they're going to start identifying it. Well, this is probably a room that's a shared space, that's a BYOD room. They'll pull that information in now, associate it with the calendar. So now you have a resource that says this is, room, Dave Dungy room and those devices. And it's now starting to be part of a management construct. So IT can see it. End users now can see it as well too. So it's actually really interesting. They even created an end user benefit. Now that it's identified as a BYOD room, they've organized that client so it flips to the dual screen mode automatically, which means for an end user, I go in and plug it in. What's on the front screen is just what I want people to see in the meeting. It's not all my other personal shared screen space. That's now split off and it's automated based upon this now being identified as a Teams room. So although there was a lot of other topics, I still found some really unique device and group meeting room spaces solutions that were being talked about here at this event.
I actually kind of want to maybe try to merge two thoughts that we were just having back to the mobile PBX and back to what Craig was saying, because I think it really speaks to some of the change that we've seen in the industry, right? So we used to have BYOD in mobile. That was a big trend. And we already had mobile PBX, but it was more BYOD. And now we're looking at, we have companies that have regulated environments that want to make sure that they're capturing all their calls and then running them through AI. That's a requirement for them. But they might be doing different types of hot desking things that are happening. So really, we're looking at everything we're talking about. It's not like phones are new. It's not like mobile PBXs are new. But what we're trying to do, like how sexy is that, right? 2024, and we're talking about desk phone. But the reason we're talking about a desk phone is because we still have some of the same needs, but we're trying to blend the different technologies, right? We're trying to blend the Teams into it. We're trying to blend the mobile into it. And we're trying to break down those barriers because I think of what Craig and John were talking about earlier is if we start looking at all these as data streams, both from a regulatory standpoint, but also from an AI innovation standpoint, you want to be able to capture all that knowledge. And that's why I think we're seeing this big resurgence in, well, how do we deal with the fact that we have hybrid work now? So some people are coming in for certain days, but not other days. How do we deal with the fact that some companies have decided they don't want to do BYOD devices anymore for regulatory reasons? They want somebody to have a physical device, or they need to blend the two of those. So it's really interesting to just get that shift of like, well, why now? Why something different?
Yeah, that's a great point, Maribel. I would add another trend is the big picture is on device AI, and that's happening now. It's on my Samsung S24 Ultra. It's coming to an Apple iPhone, and every microphone, every camera on an iPad or a tablet, a smartphone, a laptop is going to be turbocharged with AI. It's going to make those devices way more compelling. You're going to have unbelievable audio and visual experiences on those. And for those naysayers about desk phones, well, if they don't keep up with that sort of innovation, they're going to be, really disrupted very quickly by these incredible devices we're going to be carrying around. So yeah, it's a much needed investment to keep on par with what we're seeing there on the device front.
One of the things I keep following is the commercial real estate market. And there's a lot of expansion, confusion taking place. But this continues to show how the technology that we're following can help be a business continuity story. By extracting these new levels of data, like Maribel was pointing out, to understanding usage patterns, optimizing end user experience. I still see the investment in the collaboration technology and the communications technology as an opportunity to help, bellwether through some of this uncertainty of where we're going to be in terms of real estates or hybrid offices or what have you. It seems to be the pattern, at least the vendors are putting forward.
So, shall we move on to our next topic? Rob, what have we got?
Well, we said we'd talk about RingCentral, but I don't want to talk about RingCentral's announcement that they made last week at Enterprise Connect, which was they can now offer 6 nines uptime and availability on their platform. No, I think that's an interesting topic to maybe pick up another time, or maybe at the end. But I'd like to dig into their recent announcement, which was RingEX, which a similar theme throughout Enterprise Connect was more names to remember, more brand changes, that kind of thing. So this is a little bit confusing, probably one that needs to be unraveled a little bit. David, I know you're the expert on this. Tell us more.
Yeah, absolutely. So RingEX. So if you hadn't guessed by the brand name, it's obviously an employee experience play from RingCentral. This is an evolution of the RingCentral MVP, and it's really with RingSense. It offers new AI capabilities. we're talking about AI again, and that's obviously across phone, SMS, meetings, and messaging, and also it's now inclusive of sort of personal productivity features as well for the users themselves. And really this is all about designing a product or a solution to help elevate interactions of people using Ring EX. Now that's to make those interactions smarter and more efficient ultimately. But this is still in preview. Only a very few select customers are using this at the moment. So we're still kind of waiting for a bit more information around pricing and launch dates and that kind of stuff. So very, very interesting. And it actually plays into a wider thing I'm seeing across the market. And that is that shift towards employee experience more generally. We hear about customer experience all the time, but more and more companies are switching their focus to employee experience above customer experience, purely because if you want to deliver great customer experience, you start with your employees. You make your employees happy and productive, and that's how you deliver a great customer experience ultimately. But let's go to Blair right now. Blair, what did you think of this this announcement and that sort of employee experience play across the board?
Yeah, so as you said, everybody, is focusing on employee experience or customer experience. So, Ring's separating out what they've got for Ring EX and now their Ring CX. So really, the underlying thing is RingSense, as you talked about, their AI platform. And like their new tagline, or at least I've seen it a few times, is where AI meets trusted communications. So when they're talking about Ring EX, they're also talking about how it's enhanced with RingSense AI. So we're not really hearing too much just about, Ring EX. It's always Ring EX with RingSense AI. They're really tying in the AI with the phone, with SMS, with voicemails, video, and messaging, really getting it across their platform. And one thing I thought was interesting is that they're differentiating themselves a little bit with the use of AI, not just for meetings and messaging, but also for phone calls. And we heard about that a little bit from a few companies last week, but really until now, or until very recently, it was all about AI for meetings and video, and phone seemed to be kind of the last thing that companies were doing. But we did hear from a few companies last week that they're now using AI for phone calls, and that's one thing that Ring EX with RingSense does. So they have what they call Smart Notes. So it's an AI note-taking capability that you can use also for calls, and you can share the notes, via chat, email, SMS, and it becomes part of the workflow. And there are lots of other AI capabilities like messaging composition, which will help you, create the message, conversational intelligence for summaries, action items, recording highlights, message recap, all the things we've been hearing about. Also generative AI across, using it for search across conversations, like what we were just talking about. One thing they mentioned that I haven't heard too much from other vendors is unread message recap. So it uses AI to provide a summary when you miss a team message in a group chat. So that's something I hadn't really heard. And a big part of their story is trust. So they had their analyst conference a few weeks before EC, so a lot of us got previews to this. And a big part, as I said, was trust. And they talk about how they've been around for 25 years and they've been a trusted partner. They have a robust and trusted cloud platform, and you can trust them with your AI, as opposed to so many of these new AI companies that nobody's heard of, and who knows if they'll be gobbled up in a few weeks. And it is a really important story. And they talk about the reliability, which Rob just alluded to. And again, when it comes to AI, it is an important story. So they're saying that RingX is built on trust. It's fit for purpose. It's orchestrated and open. So now RingCentral can talk about EX and CX with their new CX offering for contact centers. And of course, they've been talking about the integration of EX and CX for a while, but now they also have their own CX capabilities in addition to their integration with NICE. And they're also talking about integration with, going beyond contact center to sales and marketing, which a lot of companies, So yeah, when you talk about CX, you have to go beyond just, contact center and customer service to all these other capabilities, sales and marketing in particular. So they're doing that. And again, RingSense and Ring EX tie into this because, you can bring in marketing, you can bring in sales, so they also have their events capability. So when you're doing an event, you can use Ring EX before the event, Ring CX after the event. So it's really tying everything and bringing everything in together.
Yeah, Blair, I thought RingSense for Sales is really compelling as someone who worked in sales for 20 plus years. The sales tech, the sales acceleration market was $100 billion in 2023. And there's a huge opportunity there. I would have killed to have these kind of capabilities as a salesperson. And I can imagine a whole new, business revenue stream for them, making sellers' life easier, providing an overlay of coaching and intelligence on top of that, and entering, a whole new market space that they're not necessarily known for. So that should be exciting for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I expect to see something like that in marketing eventually. They haven't said anything, but it seems like a natural progression also.
So I have a concern here, and it's I think RingCentral is doing the right thing, trying to improve the employee experience, and we all talk about employee experience, employee engagement. Nothing wrong with that rebranding per se, but from a customer point of view, what I've noticed is that IT decision makers or telecom decision makers, they don't necessarily call their end users about what they really want or what could be the most appropriate, most effective tools for their needs. Like they operate on assumptions, on their own understanding of what might be good for end users. Every time we do a survey, end user buy-in or end user input, it is really much lower on the kind of hierarchy, in the hierarchy of decision-making criteria compared to other factors, security, reliability, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know what you're hearing, but my concern is that organizations may not have a good alignment between the decision makers and the actual end users.
I'm sure they don't. When I was talking a lot about user adoption for unified communications, one of the things I always talked about was you have to get your end users involved, even before you make the decision, because you want to know, what tools they're using, what they need. And when I talked to end users, that really wasn't something that they were doing. And that was a big problem. We heard so many stories about, and the one I always use is there was like the admin to a CEO who, once they changed over to a new system, she wasn't able to use it because the one capability that she used all the time wasn't part of the new system. So she was like, forget it, I'm not using it. So without really talking to the end users and understanding what their needs are, you're going to have problems. And I think it is a big issue, Elke, and I really do wish that more organizations, before they even get into the RFP stage for some of these new capabilities, would really think about what is it that my end users want and need, and how am I going to provide it to them without disrupting what they're doing.
Yep.
And I think it's a risk. It's also an opportunity. If you look at case in point, Slack, they rose to fame not by selling to the CIO and the centralized CXO committee or C-suite, but by selling to business units that needed a more comprehensive and better messaging solution. So it was the marketing department or sales or customer service who brought in Slack sort of underneath the radar or over the top. And it sort of snowballed from there. And of course, we saw in the end that didn't allow them to beat Microsoft at that game. But it was an interesting strategy. And I think that's where like a RingSense for sales could, sell to the VP of sales or the sales department or sales leadership and get around that traditional, telco first, telecom centric.
But I think we are seeing a lot more focus on vertical markets. And when you talk about vertical markets, you really are bringing in those end users, because you have to understand, if it's for healthcare, what are your nurses using? What are the doctors and the staff using, and what do they need? So I think with the focus on verticals, which I think would be great for another topic, I think we are seeing more of the end users brought into the discussion and really identifying what their needs are.
I'll agree with that. There's one last angle I'll add to it, potentially for another topic. They're not the only entity that actually did some rebranding around some of these workloads. Zoom also repositioned itself
Right.
as workplaces. Independent of going down what they did, I think it's a trend of what they're trying to circle in on what might be this involving of end users within my organization's needs and then potentially customer needs around communication as well too. Zoom did workplace and then they did business services and they kind of had an internal circle around this and external forms of communications. Ring Central is pairing its Ring EX with its Ring CX, similar idea as well too. So it might be a little bit of to me, it looks like the industry's put out so much features and functionalities as of late that it's become very confusing. And I think it's a little bit of cleanup on some of these companies in terms of what they're offering and where they should be really focused to get to the point that you're talking about, Blair, then honing in on what are the needs that this group of individuals needs, my employees, what do this group of my customers need in terms of communications and getting more aligned with that.
I love that you picked the cleanup aspect of it, because I think that it has become confusing. And then as we've gone into AI, everybody's like slapped AI powered everything on everything. Right. They've either been AI powered or co-piloted. And really at the end of the day, when you go talk to somebody, they need to buy a solution for a specific thing. Back to Blair's point about it being vertical, back to Evan's point about it being roles based, like who is this for and why is it better than it was before? And I think that's what you're starting to see with some of the rebranding.
Absolutely. So should we move on to our next topic, which might not be too far away from what we've been talking about? Rob, what is next?
Well, on the topic of productizing every AI feature that that we can possibly come up with recently, names specifically, as Maribel rightly said, it's confusing. But we saw lots of AI names at Enterprise Connect last week. And one particular favorite of mine was GoTo's AI, which is now called GoPilot. I think that was the catchiest one I heard last week. But I'd love to hear from everyone else as what they saw at the show last week. And David, I know you've got a few just to kind of shout out, initially.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's so many. Last week, you couldn't move at EC without bumping into something to do with AI. Zoom was launching things. Five9 had their Gen AI studio. There's obviously the fanfare around Teams and Copilot. Amazon Connect had some announcements as well, and of course WebEx, and we've discussed some here already as well. Should we go around the room though? Maybe give us your top AI announcement from the week. Let's start with Evan, and we'll go around the room.
Yeah, for me, it was Five9 and the Gen AI Studio announcement. I thought it was really forward-looking and, ahead of the curve. We have a long road ahead in terms of really commercializing AI in the contact center, and they've hit on what I think are all the key requirements around things like customization, personalization for building AI interactions. I thought it was really interesting. They have a generic sort of engine agnostic approach because, despite OpenAI's excitement around their model, there's a ton of models. And of course, private AI means that you can't have one model that will fit all. And, as any good developer will find, you need a testing, monitoring sort of studio with a library and prompt management, all the things to build out your custom AI workflows. So that was really intriguing. They also talked about responsible AI, which you don't hear much about in the contact center space. So they're sort of taking a strong perspective on that. And just generally, it's I think a platform that will bode well for a number of years as these models get rolled out.
Blair, give us your top AI announcement.
So there are two. So I kind of liked, and going back to the vertical story, I liked what TalkDesk was talking about with their AI. So they've got TalkDesk, TalkDesk Copilot for healthcare. So they've got TalkDesk Autopilot for specific industries. So one was healthcare. They've got banking. They've got retail. So specific autopilots, copilots, autopilots, whatever, for these specific industries. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then NICE also had some good stories. They've had their Enlighten actions for a while, but now they're basically on their next generation already, and being able to do more analysis on data and integrating in different applications. So it's not just the CX1 data, but bringing in third-party applications. So they've been doing some interesting things. And as Evan said, definitely the 5.9 Gen Studio was very interesting. Funny how they're all contact center related.
Yeah. Elke, what was your top AI announcement?
I decided not to pay attention to AI announcement because everybody else was.
Let's go to Craig then. Craig, what was your top AI announcement?
I'll do a similar approach as Elka. It was I actually admire what WebEx did at their keynote. They had AI, which they already announced, but they said they were conscientiously trying to focus on the message of experiences as opposed to AI. So I know it's not specifically a feature set. They took those AIs and were trying to weave it in across all the portfolio and talking about it as being more of a tool as opposed to a banner to wave. I think the key idea, which they were hitting on, which I think many vendors are starting to do, is we're at this challenge of getting to AI promise to AI proof. And I think people are starting looking for practical applications in market. And that is, that's what I was trying to find in some of those announcements.
Fantastic. So let's move on to our last topic of discussion then. Rob, what is on the agenda?
Well, I just wanted to briefly touch on the big announcement that's just happened in the last, day or so, which is the Microsoft announcement to decouple Teams and Office worldwide amid the antitrust case that's been happening. So I just want to dig into that. David, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, as you said, we've been speaking about this over here in Europe for a little while now, and it's now going to go global. This was kicked off from a complaint from Slack due to the Teams and Microsoft 365 being bundled together, hence the antitrust probe and this result. So I guess in my mind, I'm trying to figure out if this is is this a big deal or a non-story? Obviously, Microsoft's going to be selling Teams and Microsoft 365 separately. It looks like they're going to come in at $7.75 for 365 and another $5 something for Teams. Do people care? We've got 320 million users on Microsoft Teams right now. Just about every business on the planet is touching the Microsoft ecosystem in one way or another. Is this going to have an impact, or is this going to be maybe another Internet Explorer story where, do you remember Internet Explorer? The same thing happened. There was a probe there, and then they had to unbundle Explorer from the Microsoft, the Windows. The Windows Play, and of course that had a massive impact on Microsoft's share of the browser market. So let's go to our experts. Who have we got? John Arnold, looks like you're back in the room. Can you hear us?
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of an old news story, but they have to make it new. The announcement initially was from last year, this unbundling, right? For to be compliant with EU, concerns. But the big change, I think, and why they're making an announcement now to make it more real and more global is because, maybe a week or two ahead of Enterprise Connect, the EU Parliament actually passed the EU AI Act, making it law. Up till that point, it was really just in the works. And the same also last month for Digital Services Act. And I think the other one's called Digital Markets Act. So the regulatory environment is becoming much more real now with pretty big penalties for those who don't comply. So I think Microsoft is just getting ahead of the curve on this and saying, well, if it's coming to the EU, eventually these similar regs are going to come into play here in North America and possibly Asia Pac. So I think by making it a consistent play across the board, I think it's probably a pretty good sign because they have to because they're considered what are called a gatekeeper, just like Google and Amazon. Google is a big one, but anyways, the big tech players. This is what this regulation is really aimed at. And they have to make their platforms open to all. And so, they may not like it, but that's the price. You can't just pay the fines and get your way through it all. You have to kind of play fair once the regs are in place. And that's what's happening now. So the details I'm not that interested in about the pricing. I think it's just the action that they have to take. And I think it's going to signal other trends, for other vendors to start, falling into line.
And I think to David's point, Teams is ubiquitous and so many companies are using it and they don't have to change anything. So companies that already have Teams can continue using the plans that they already have. So it's only going to affect new sales, not existing ones. And, so it'll still have an impact, but not as much as one if it affected everybody.
I think the unbundled Teams is priced fairly competitively. And with discounts, volume discounts, discretionary discounts, whatever you choose, I think it will compete still quite well against everybody else in the meetings and messaging space. So I don't believe this will be detrimental to Microsoft's success moving forward. Could it make a dent short term? Perhaps. But I'm not worried.
Not selling the stock yet.
My question, yeah, my question here is, okay, well, we've been telling everybody to go for a platform approach so they can launch all these natively integrated services and basically bundle. Now, are we going to go and tell everybody, both the platform vendors and the MSPs and the others reselling to unbundle? I just don't know. I'm not a regulatory expert, so they draw the line somewhere, but I don't know.
But this is more to do with the gatekeepers. It's not the bundling. It's not the products. It's the gatekeepers who control access for citizens and consumers and businesses to make choice. And the fact that they won't, they're not going to feature competitors on there. When you start searching on Microsoft, those competitors aren't going to show up. That's the issue, right? So they have to level the playing field because it's especially important for EU-based tech companies who are trying to compete in their home markets. Because if they don't have this protection, they have no way of being accessed or discovered locally. So that's really what this, in my view anyways, that's what I think this is all about.
Fantastic. So I think maybe that's a great place to end today's discussion. But before we go, there are some events coming up. Rob, I think you've got a list of events to share with us all.
Yeah, so just very quickly, if you are interested in getting out there to some of these events to meet the vendors, discover all these new technologies and products on show, and obviously learn about how you can use these technologies in your organization, then there's some great events coming up. Right around the corner, we've got Google Next, April 9th to the 11th. We've got Comms vNext, which is a Microsoft community event, April 23rd to the 24th. We've got Cloud Connections, which is effectively a service provider event in the US, and that's April 17th to the 19th. I believe Blair and Elka are going to be attending, so do say hello if you do attend. We've also got the European Collaboration Summit, May 14th to the 16th. Also, so lots of events and more to come after that. If you want to keep up to date on forthcoming events, have a look at uctoday.com/events for all the listings.
Fantastic. So I'd just like to say thank you so much to our panel today for joining us. We'll go around again. Evan Kirstel, thank you. Blair Pleasant, John Arnold, Craig Durr and Elka, and of course Mary Bell, who's dropped off already. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights. My name's David Dungay, and we will see you next time.